My wife had been dead for 5 years. That was not a suspicion. That was not a feeling. It was a fact I had built my entire life around. I attended her funeral. I signed her death certificate. I placed white chrysanthemums on her grave every year on the anniversary of her death. I watched her coffin lowered into the ground while her relatives wept around me, and the Korean autumn turned everything cold and golden. I did all of that. And for 5 years I believed, truly believed, that Zinachi Okafor, the woman I had loved more than my own breath, was gone. But she was not. She was standing at the door of a small coastal house near Busan, thinner than I remembered, older in the eyes and terrified. Not of death, not of grief. Terrified of me finding her. And behind her skirt, holding the fabric with 2 small hands, was a little girl with wide brown eyes. My eyes. This is the story of the 5 years I spent mourning a woman who was watching me do it. And of the daughter I never knew I had. My name is Kang Ji-hoon. I am 41 years old. I work in logistics management at a mid-size import company in Seoul. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that I have never redecorated since my wife died, because changing it felt like erasing her. I am, by most measurements, an ordinary man, except for one thing I did every single month without fail. On the 15th of every month, I transferred 650,000 won to a bank account that belonged to Mama Ebra. Mama Ebra Okafor, Zinachi's mother. A quiet, round-faced woman from Enugu, Nigeria, who had prayed every morning with her hands on her Bible and called me son from the first week I visited. After Zinachi died, I became the only family Mama Ebra had left. And she became, without either of us saying it, the only person on earth who had loved Zinachi as much as I had. Sending that money was not charity. It was not obligation. It was ritual. It was the one act that let me feel, for a few minutes each month, that I was still Zinachi's husband, that her family was still my family, that my love still had somewhere to go. For 5 years I sent that money, and for 5 years it was received. Then, on a Tuesday morning in early spring, my bank called. Mr. Kang. The voice was polite, professional, carefully blank. There is a problem with the account linked to your monthly standing transfer. I thought it was a technical issue, a routing error. Something that would take 10 minutes to sort out with a few phone calls. But something about those words made my chest tighten in a way I could not explain. Something animal and instinctive. The way your body knows before your mind does. What kind of problem? I asked. We have flagged the account for irregular activity. The account holder's verification documents may have lapsed. We will need to hold the transfer pending review. I thanked them and hung up. I sat at my desk for a long time. The account holder's verification documents. Mama Ebra was 71 years old, half-blind from cataracts, and lived in a small house near the coast south of Busan, a place Zinachi had found for her so she could be close to the sea. The idea of Mama Ebra managing bank verification paperwork on her own was, well, it was laughable and heartbreaking in equal measure. I decided I would go myself. I told my manager I had a personal emergency. I stopped at the market and bought rice, dried fish, green tea, a blood pressure monitor, some vitamins, and the specific brand of Nigerian peanut crackers that Mama Ebra liked, and that I ordered online every few months because she could not find them anywhere in Korea. I put them all in a box. And I drove south toward the coast with Guilt sitting in the passenger seat beside me, the way Guilt always did when I visited, because I never visited enough, because I was always too busy, because being around Mama Ebra meant being around grief I had not finished carrying. The house was the same as I remembered. Small. White-walled. A garden in the front that Mama Ebra kept obsessively neat, with marigolds along the path and a small statue of the Virgin Mary near the gate. The kind of house that looked like it was held together by prayer and habit. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I set the box down and looked around. The curtains were closed. The marigolds were overgrown and yellowing. The statue was dusty and tilted slightly to the left, as if it had been bumped and no one had straightened it. I went next door. An elderly Korean woman answered. She had kind eyes and a face lined with a lifetime of seaside wind. She looked at me the way you look at someone who has walked into the wrong room at the wrong time. And then she looked at me the way you look at a ghost. I am looking for Ebra Okafor, I said. The Nigerian woman who lives next door. Do you know where she is? The old woman's face shifted. Something careful came into her expression. Son, she said softly. Just that word. Son. The way Mama Ebra used to say it. Mama Ebra died 3 years ago. I did not move. I am not sure I breathed. 3 years ago. For 3 years, I had been sending 650,000 won every single month to the account of a dead woman. And someone had been receiving it. I opened my mouth to ask who. To ask how. To ask anything. But before the words came out, I heard a sound behind me. The creak of a door. I turned. And the whole world stopped. She was thinner than I remembered. The weight she had lost was not just physical. It was something else, something structural. As if 5 years of hiding had worn away layers of her that used to exist. Her face was the same face. The same wide cheekbones. The same dark eyes that used to look at me across a dinner table and make me feel like the only person in any room. But her eyes now held something they had never held before. Fear. Not surprise. Not shock. Fear. The kind of fear that tells you someone has been expecting the worst to arrive for years and has just watched it walk up the path. Zinachi, I said. Her name left my mouth before I even decided to say it. Like a reflex. Like my body recognized her before my mind could process what my eyes were seeing. She did not say my name back. She looked at me for a long moment. Long enough that I began to wonder if I had gone mad. If grief had finally broken the part of me that could tell real from imagined. And then she whispered, "You were never supposed to find us." I heard the sound from behind her before I saw her. A small shuffle. The pad of feet on a wooden floor. And then from behind the fold of Zinachi's sweater, a little girl appeared. She was small. For maybe 5 years old. She wore a yellow long-sleeved shirt and had her hair in 2 uneven puffs on either side of her head, the way Zinachi used to wear hers in old photographs. Her skin was the warm brown of her mother's. Her nose was her mother's. But her eyes were mine. Wide. Single-lidded. The specific dark brown of the Kong family. A shade my mother always called midnight ink. I had seen that exact look in the mirror my entire life. I gripped the porch railing. My knees were not reliable anymore. The little girl stared at me with the focused intensity that only small children have. Completely unguarded, evaluating me with her entire self. Then she tugged at Zinachi's sweater and whispered, "Mom? Who is he?" I looked at Zinachi. My voice came out lower than I intended. Rougher. "Who is she?" Zinachi's hand tightened around the doorframe. Her knuckles went pale. "Ji-hoon. Who is she, Zinachi?" The little girl flinched at my tone, and I hated myself immediately. I made myself lower my voice. I crouched slightly so I was closer to her level. "I'm sorry," I said more gently. "I didn't mean to be loud. I'm surprised." The little girl moved behind Zinachi's leg, but she kept watching me, still evaluating. Zinachi exhaled. "Nari," she said. "Go upstairs, please." Nari. The name went through me like a blade finding a gap in armor. 'Cause Nari was not a random name. Nari was not something Zinachi had chosen without me. Nari was the name we had chosen together. 2 years into our marriage, we had sat up late one night talking about children, the idea of them, the hypothetical beauty of them, and Zinachi had said she wanted a name that could travel. A name that belonged to more than one place. A name a Nigerian Korean child could carry without it being a compromise. We had settled on Nari, Korean for Lily. And it sounded, Zinachi said, like the wind moving through tall grass. We had chosen that name together. And she had used it. Without me. I waited until the sound of small footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Then I turned back to Zinachi. "How old is she?" Zinachi looked away. Toward the sea. Toward the darkening sky. Anywhere but my face. "4," she finally said. "For what?" 4.5. I closed my eyes. Zinachi had supposedly died 5 years ago. 5 years, 3 months and 2 days ago to be exact. I knew the number so precisely because I had counted the days the way people count the days since a disaster. It becomes a unit of measurement. A way of organizing time into before and after. 4.5 years. That meant Nari had been conceived before the accident. Before the funeral. Before I stood in a cemetery in the Korean autumn, and watched my wife's coffin go into the ground. Before all of it, my voice broke on the words, "Is she mine?" Zinichi did not answer immediately. The silence stretched between us like a bridge over something too deep to look at. Then very quietly, "Yes." I grabbed the porch railing with both hands. For a moment the world tilted. I had a daughter. I had had a daughter for 4.5 years. 4.5 years of birthdays I had not attended. First steps I had not seen. First words I had not heard. Fever nights when she had been sick and I had not been there to sit beside her bed and count her breaths. Bedtime stories told by her mother. In a house I did not know existed. On a coast I had never visited. 4.5 years of Nari growing up with my eyes in her face and no idea that I existed. I looked at Zinichi, and I said the truest thing I knew how to say. "You stole my child from me." She covered her mouth with both hands and began to cry. Not theatrically. Not performatively. The quiet, shaking kind of crying that happens when the thing you have been holding together for years finally cracks. "I protected her," she whispered. "From me." "No." "Then from who?" She looked toward the road. Toward the dark tree line beyond the gate. And what I saw in her eyes was not guilt. It was something much older and much colder than guilt. It was terror. "You need to leave," she whispered. "Before he finds us." I did not leave. I want to be clear about that. Some part of me considered it. Some survival instinct said, "Get in your car, drive back to Seoul, call a lawyer. Let the institutions handle this." Because the rational version of this situation was simple. My wife had faked her death, hidden a child from me, and taken my money under false pretenses. That was fraud. That was kidnapping by some definitions. That was a list of crimes. But rationality is a thin coat in a storm like this one. I stepped inside. The house smelled like the same cooking oil Zinichi had always used. Like the specific brand of Nigerian pepper she ordered online. Like a home, a real lived-in home, that had been built carefully and quietly out of everything she had taken with her when she disappeared from my life. I sat down at the kitchen table. Zinichi sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she had made automatically. The way hands do things when the mind is somewhere else entirely. "Start from the beginning," I said. "Ji-hoon." "From the beginning, Zinichi." She set the cup down. She looked at her own hands. And then she said the name. Chairman Kwon Dae-hyun. I knew the name. Everyone in Korea knew the name. Chairman Kwon was the kind of man whose photograph appeared in newspapers next to the word philanthropist. His foundation funded children's hospitals, rural education programs, cultural preservation projects. Politicians smiled beside him at charity galas. He had awards. He had honorary degrees. He had the particular gleaming respectability of a man who has spent enormous resources making sure no one asks the right questions. Zinichi had worked for his foundation. I remembered that clearly. She had joined 2 years before her death, before her fake death, as a grants coordinator. She had been proud of the work. She had believed in it. I had never had reason to think twice about Chairman Kwon. "He was your employer," I said. "He was more than that," Zinichi said quietly. "And he was much less than what he appeared to be." She told me then, haltingly, carefully, the way you tell a story you have told only to yourself for years and have never fully survived the telling of, what she had discovered inside the Kwon Foundation. It began with a discrepancy in the grants ledger. Numbers that did not reconcile. Donations that were logged but never dispersed. Partner organizations that existed only on paper. Money that moved through the foundation's accounts and disappeared into a network of shell companies that Zinichi, with her background in financial administration, recognized immediately for what they were. She had been laundering the evidence of serious large-scale fraud. Not knowingly. Not at first. But once she saw it, she could not unsee it. She had made a mistake that changed everything. She had told someone. A colleague. A woman named Elena Cruz. A Spanish-Filipino accountant who had been at the foundation for 6 years, and who Zinichi trusted completely. Elena had listened, had looked at the documents Zinichi showed her, and had said 2 words. "We report." They had begun gathering evidence quietly, photographing ledgers, copying files to external drives. building a case they planned to give to a prosecutor. They were 3 weeks from being ready. And then Chairman Kwan found out. How? I asked. Zinachi's voice was very flat when she answered. Someone on the inside. Someone we trusted. We still don't know who. Chairman Kwan had not confronted them directly. He was too careful for that. Too practiced in the art of making problems disappear without fingerprints. What happened instead was that Zinachi began to receive signals. Small ones at first. Her computer at work was accessed after hours. Her home phone had a sound on the line she could not explain. A car she did not recognize parked across the street from our apartment for 4 days in a row. I told myself I was being paranoid, Zinachi said. I told myself I was imagining it. She pressed her hands flat on the table. And then Elena died. A car accident. A mountain road north of Busan. Black ice, the police said. Tragic, they said. Elena Cruz, 34 years old. No family in Korea. Dead on impact. Zinachi had stood in the hospital and looked at the body and known, with the absolute hollow certainty of someone watching the future arrive, that it was not an accident. I was 4 weeks pregnant, she said. You knew. I had found out 3 days before Elena died. She had not told me yet. She had been waiting for the right moment, the way you wait for the right moment when the news is enormous and you want to surround it with the right kind of light. I was going to tell you the night it happened, she said. I had a dinner planned. I had bought that wine you liked, the one from the Giala vineyard. I remembered the wine. I remembered finding it unopened in our cabinet after the funeral, and not being able to throw it away for 2 years. But that afternoon I received a message, Zinachi continued. No name, just the location, a photograph of you leaving work. And one sentence. She met my eyes. You are next. Unless you disappear. The rain outside had become a proper storm. I could hear it drumming on the roof, running off the eaves, turning the garden into a dark wet mirror. You should have told me, I said. You would have gone to the police. Yes. And the police, she stopped. Breathe. Ji-hoon, Chairman Kwan has people inside the police. Inside the prosecutor's office. Elena's accident was investigated by 2 officers who had attended the foundation's annual gala as personal guests. Nothing was ever going to happen to him through official channels. Not then. Not without the right person. I thought about what she was saying. I turned it over. I looked for the part where it made sense for her to choose what she chose. So you decided to die instead, I said. I decided Nari had to live, she said. And there was nothing I could say to that. There is something you need to see, Zinachi said. She stood and moved to the kitchen. I followed. She stopped at a wooden trapdoor set into the floor, old iron-ringed, the kind of door that belongs to a different century. My mother used this during storms, she said. She used it for other things too, eventually. She pulled it open. The smell rose immediately. Salt, damp wood, paper. The specific musty cold of a space that has been sealed against the outside world for a long time. I followed her down. The cellar was larger than I expected. Stone walls. A bare bulb on a cord that she clicked on. Shelves of emergency supplies, water, tinned food, blankets, a first aid kit, the practical infrastructure of a woman who had raised a child alone while hiding from a powerful man. But what she walked me toward was a metal cabinet against the far wall. Floor to ceiling. Padlocked. She lifted a key from the chain around her neck. The chain I had thought was a necklace. She unlocked the cabinet. Inside. External hard drives wrapped in plastic. Folders of documents, tabbed and organized with the neat precision of someone who had spent years managing Grant's paperwork. A bundle of passports, 3 of them I saw with different names. A thick envelope of cash. And a folder, separate from the others, that she took out last and held for a moment before handing to me. I opened it. Photographs. An accident scene. A black car, crushed and burned, against a concrete barrier on a mountain road. An official accident report, stamped with the Busan Police District seal. A morgue photograph. I looked at the photograph for a long time. The face was damaged. The fire had been significant. But even through the damage I could see enough to understand what I was looking at. It was not Zinachi. The face was different. The bone structure was different. This woman was smaller, lighter in build. My hands were shaking when I looked up. Who is she? I whispered. Elena Cruz, Zinichi said. I put the folder down on a wooden crate because I could no longer hold it steadily. The fire, I said. The identification. Elena and I had exchanged identification documents as part of our plan to go to the prosecutor. If something happened to one of us, the other would have the documentation to prove the fraud. Zinachi's voice was very quiet. We had not planned for it to work this way. You let them identify Elena as you, I said. Yes. You let me bury her. Yes. You stood somewhere and watched me. No. Her voice cracked. I could not watch. I could not be anywhere near it. I was already on my way south. I was already here. 5 years ago, while I was standing at a graveside in the Korean autumn holding chrysanthemums that I did not know I was placing on a stranger's coffin, Zinichi was in this house. Already pregnant with Nari. Already becoming someone else. I sat on the wooden crate for a long time. The cellar light buzzed softly. Outside, the storm pressed against the walls of the house. Elena's family, I said. Does anyone know? Elena had no family in Korea. Her parents are in the Philippines. They were told she died in an accident. They were given her personal effects, some of them, and a small amount of money from the foundation. Zinichi paused. I believe Chairman Kwan arranged that. To make the story clean. I looked at the cabinet, at the hard drives, at the folders. What is all of this? Everything we gathered, Zinichi said. Every document. Every transfer record. Every shell company. Everything Elena and I built before it fell apart. I took it with me when I ran. Why didn't you? I stopped. Why didn't you use it? Go to someone? All this time. I was trying to find the right person, she said. Someone outside Chairman Kwan's reach. Someone I could trust. Did you find them? She looked at me. I think I just did. I climbed back up from the cellar with the folder under my arm, and the weight of 5 years rearranging itself inside my chest. At the top of the stairs, Nari was sitting on the third step, very still, her chin resting on her hands, watching the trapdoor, waiting. She did not pretend she had not been there the whole time. Are you my appa? She asked. Appa, the Korean word for dad. I had not heard that word addressed to me in any context, ever. I had no children. I had never expected children. The word landed somewhere very deep and stayed there. I crouched down to her level. I think so, I said. She considered this with the gravity of a judge. You took a long time, she said. I had no answer for that. None that a 4.5-year-old could hold. So I just nodded. I know, I said. I'm sorry. She looked at me for another long moment. Then she climbed down the remaining 2 steps, walked to me, and put her small hand in mine. That was all. No further commentary. No ceremony. Just her hand in mine, warm and certain, as if the decision had already been made somewhere she trusted more than words. I stood in the kitchen with my daughter holding my hand and my dead wife standing 3 feet away, and the evidence of serious crimes in a folder under my arm. And I pulled out my phone. No signal. I moved around the kitchen holding the phone up. 1 bar appeared at the window over the sink. I held it there, still, and called the one person I trusted in the way you trust someone who has seen the worst version of you and stayed anyway. Lee Min-jun. Prosecutor Lee Min-jun. We had gone to university together. He had been the serious one, always the one who studied while the rest of us played. He had joined the prosecutor's office 15 years ago, and had spent the intervening time becoming the kind of official that powerful people were cautious around. He was also the only person I could think of who was completely outside Chairman Kwan's world. Ji-hoon. He answered on the second ring. Even at this hour he sounded alert. Lee, I said. Listen carefully and don't interrupt me. A pause. All right. I found Zinichi. Silence. She is alive. She has been hiding near Busan for 5 years. And we have a daughter. A longer silence. Then. Where are you exactly? I told him. Are you safe? I think so. For now. Lee was quiet for a moment in the way that meant he was thinking at full speed. I had seen that silence many times. I had learned to trust it. Do not call local police, he said finally. Do not contact anyone local. Are you certain you were not followed? No, I admitted. I came because of the bank. I didn't know I was coming to find her. Which means if someone was monitoring the bank account, they would know someone came to check on it, I finished. And they may already be looking for where the trail leads. His voice sharpened to something precise and purposeful. Listen to me, Ji-hoon. Lock every door and window. Keep your phone on. Let no one in unless they give you a code phrase. A code phrase. Jasmine Rain, he said. Anyone I send will say those words first. If they do not say those words, do not open the door. Do you understand? Yes. I will make some calls. You have something for me, I assume. I looked at the folder under my arm. Yes, I said. Quite a lot. Good. He exhaled. Ji-hoon, take care of them tonight. I will do the rest. I handed the phone to Zinachi. She held it with both hands. She listened without speaking, her eyes moving to Nari and back to the window repeatedly. At one point she nodded, though Lee could not see her. When she handed it back, her face had changed. Not less afraid, but differently afraid, the way the fear shifts when someone capable finally says, I see what you're carrying. Let me take some of it. I picked Nari up. She was heavier than I expected, denser the way children are when they are real and present rather than imagined. She put her head on my shoulder with the automatic trust of a small animal finding warmth. I walked to the front window and looked at the road. Rain. Trees. Darkness. For now, nothing else. Ji-hoon, Zinachi said from across the room. I turned. She was standing very still, her hands clasped in front of her, and she was looking at me with an expression I had no category for. It was not apology. It was not explanation. It was something rawer than both of those. I know what I took from you, she said. I know there is nothing I can say that makes it. Not tonight, I said. She stopped. Not tonight, I said again more gently. Tonight we stay safe. The rest, we have time for the rest. She nodded once. And outside, the rain fell straight and hard, and the trees were dark, and in the distance somewhere black SUVs were already moving south. They arrived at midnight. Not with lights or sirens, nothing so visible. 3 black vehicles pulling quietly off the road, parking under the tree line, doors opening and closing with the practiced quiet of people who have done this many times in the dark. I saw them through the window first. Jasmine Rain, I called out before they knocked. Jasmine Rain, came the answer clear and calm through the door. There were 6 of them. 3 in dark jackets with IDs that identified them as Special Investigation Unit, a division that sits outside the regular police chain of command and reports directly to senior prosecutors. The other 3 were in plain clothes. One of the plainclothes officers was a woman who introduced herself simply as Agent Han. She had the kind of face that did not give information away, and the kind of manner that made you immediately believe she had a plan. They moved through the house quickly, professionally, checking windows, checking sightlines, communicating in short phrases through earpieces. One of them went to the cellar and came up carrying the metal cabinet. They took everything. The hard drives. The documents. The folders. The evidence that Zinachi had guarded for 5 years in the dark underneath a coastal house, waiting for the right moment and the right person. Agent Han spoke to Zinachi for about 10 minutes in a low voice, taking notes on a small pad. Whatever Zinachi told her, she did not react with surprise. She nodded, wrote, asked short questions, nodded again. Then she came to me. Mr. Kong, she said. We are going to move you to a safe house outside the city. We will use 2 vehicles, your wife and daughter in the first, you in the second. This is a standard precaution. I'd prefer to stay with them, I said. I understand. But if something happens on the road, it is easier to protect 2 separate vehicles than one. I looked at Zinachi. She nodded slightly. Okay, I said. We'll be there in under 40 minutes, Agent Han said. There will be food and a change of clothes. You will have time to speak as a family in a secure environment. She said as a family. The way someone says something that they recognize carries enormous weight and are being careful with. I crouched down to Nari. She was watching all of this with enormous eyes, not frightened exactly, but recording everything with the precise attention of a child who has grown up in a house full of caution and has learned to watch the adults carefully for information. "We are going somewhere safe," I told her. "The people in the black jackets are the good ones." She looked at the nearest agent, a large man with a crew cut who happened to be looking at his phone. "How do you know?" she asked. "Your mother trusted them," I said. She thought about this. "Okay," she said. And she put her hand in mine again. The safe house was a converted farmhouse 20 minutes outside the city, off the main road, surrounded by low hills, with a garden that would have looked ordinary to anyone passing by and a reinforced interior that definitely was not. They gave us 2 connected rooms. Nari fell asleep almost immediately, in a narrow bed with a yellow blanket that someone had thought to include, the kind of detail that made me think Agent Han had done this particular kind of thing before, the kind that involved children. Zinichi and I sat across from each other at a small table by the window. For a long time, neither of us spoke. There was too much to say and we were both too tired and too raw to say any of it correctly. So we sat in the particular silence that exists between people who share a history so long and so complicated that language keeps failing to find the beginning of it. "Tell me about her," I finally said. "Nari." "Yes." Zinichi looked toward the bedroom door. Her expression changed completely. Softened in a way I recognized, the way her face used to change when she talked about things she loved. "She is stubborn," she said. "Relentlessly stubborn. When she decides something, that is the end of the discussion. She gets that from you. I would argue she gets that from you. She gets it from both of us. It is a problem." I almost smiled. It felt strange in my face, like a muscle that had not been used in years. "She started walking at 10 months, Zinichi said. Which the pediatrician said was very early. She talked at 14 months, full sentences by 2. She loves the sea, I think because she has grown up near it. Every morning she wants to go look at the water before breakfast." I thought about all the mornings I had spent in my apartment in Seoul, eating breakfast alone, not knowing that 15 kilometers south my daughter was looking at the sea. "She asked about you," Zinichi said quietly. "When?" "Starting at about 3 years old. Children notice when the shape of a family is different from the families they see around them." She paused. I told her that her father lived far away, that he did not know about her yet, that it was not because he would not want her. I pressed my hands against the table. "What did she say?" She said, "Then why doesn't someone tell him?" I covered my face with my hands for a moment. Not weeping, I was past the point of weeping, or not yet at it, or somewhere that had no adequate map. Just pressing my hands against my face and existing inside the magnitude of it. "I'm angry with you," I said. "I know. I have a right to be angry with you." "Yes. And I am also." I stopped. "I can hold both things. I am learning to hold both things." Zinichi nodded. "I spent 5 years wanting to tell you," she said. "There was not a single day that I did not think about it. But every time I thought about reaching out, I thought about what Chairman Kwan would do if he found the trail. And I thought about Nari." She looked at me steadily. "Every time Nari won. I thought about that. I thought about what it would mean to love someone so completely that you would sacrifice everything else. Your marriage, your identity, your own death, another person's grief, to keep them safe. I thought about Nari's hand in mine. I thought about how it had felt like the most natural thing in the world." "She won with me too," I said. And Zinichi put her face in her hands, and this time she cried properly, the long, exhausted crying of someone who has been holding the weight of something enormous for years, and has finally been given permission to set it down. I moved around the table and sat beside her. I did not say anything. I put my arm around my wife. And we stayed like that until Nari called out from the next room and we both went to her, and for the first time in 5 years the 3 of us were in the same room together. And then, the morning came the way mornings come after storms, clean and still and almost unbelievably ordinary. I woke to a small weight on my chest. Nari had migrated from her bed at some point in the night and installed herself against my side, one arm across my ribs, her breathing slow and even and warm. I lay very still. I was afraid to move. Not because I would wake her, though I was afraid of that too, but because I had the specific superstitious feeling that this was the kind of moment that breaks if you look at it directly. that it was held together by the same fragile logic as everything beautiful, and if I moved too quickly, it would dissolve back into the 5 years of absence that had preceded it. I did not move. I lay in the early light of the safe house and listened to my daughter breathe, and let the ordinary miracle of it settle into me like water into dry ground. When she finally woke, she looked at me with the disoriented seriousness of a child waking somewhere unfamiliar. Then she seemed to remember. "Oh," she said. "You're still here." "I told you I would be," I said. She considered this. "You took a very long time to come," she said again. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry." "Okay," she said, and climbed over me to go find breakfast. That was Nari, 4.5 years old, with her mother's face in my eyes and a capacity for forgiveness that I had not earned and could not explain and would spend the rest of my life trying to deserve. EyesJ was already in the kitchen, the small galley kitchen of the safe house, making tea with the focused attention she had always brought to small domestic rituals. The agent's shift had changed overnight. 2 new officers were stationed near the front door, drinking coffee and reading from their phones. The cabinet from the cellar was already on its way to Prosecutor Lee's office. Agent Han briefed us over breakfast: macaroni, peas, tea, crackers that Nari insisted on because she had found them in a cupboard and decided they were hers now. Chairman Kwon, Agent Han told us, had been under discreet surveillance since 3 a.m., when one of Lee's analysts had flagged unusual activity from a financial monitoring system. He was moving assets. He was preparing to leave. "He knows something changed," Agent Han said. "How?" I asked. "The bank flag on the account. It triggered a secondary system that Kwon's people have access to. Someone on his side saw it. They are moving him." EyesJ went very still. Nari, who had been arranging crackers into a pattern on the table, looked up at her mother's face and stopped. "It's okay," EyesJ said to her. Calmly, evenly. The way she had said "it's okay" 10,000 times, I realized, to a child who had grown up in the shadow of someone else's danger. "Is it?" Nari asked, in the tone of someone who wants the actual answer and not the reassuring one. EyesJ looked at me. "Yes," I said. "It actually is." Nari went back to her crackers. By midday, everything was moving. Lee Min-jun had called in every contact he had built across 15 years of careful, unglamorous, by-the-book prosecution work. He had federal authorization. He had the evidence from Zanachi's cabinet. He had 4 witnesses across 2 countries who had been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. What he did not have was enough time. Because Chairman Kwon Dae-hyun, who had spent 40 years as the kind of man who always had a contingency and always had an exit, was at a private airstrip north of Busan at 1:15 in the afternoon, boarding a small jet with a flight plan filed to an unnamed destination and no plan to return. The operation was fast and specific, the way good operations are. I was not part of it. I stayed at the safe house with Nari, who was deeply and categorically unimpressed by this decision but accepted it when I promised to explain everything when she was older, which she informed me was a very unsatisfying answer. She was not wrong. EyesJ went with Agent Han. She had testimony to give. Real-time testimony at the scene that would be part of the formal record. She was the witness. She was the person who had survived. She was the reason any of this was happening. She kissed Nari on the forehead before she left. She looked at me for a long moment. "Come back," I said. "Always," she said. What I know of the confrontation I learned afterward, from Agent Han's summary and from Lee, who called me from the airstrip. Chairman Kwon had been seated in the cabin of the jet when the agents moved. He had 2 assistants with him and a security operative who attempted to resist and was detained without significant incident. Kwon himself did not resist. He was 64 years old. He was wearing a suit that cost more than most Koreans' monthly salaries. He had the specific particular stillness of a man who has always expected this moment somewhere deep in himself, the way powerful men who do terrible things always know at some level that the ledger exists. They brought him out of the plane. EyesJ was standing on the airstrip. I heard secondhand from Lee that Kwon looked at her with an expression that moved through several things very quickly: recognition, disbelief, recalculation. He had believed she was dead. He had paid for her death, had arranged for the trail, the accident, the clean identification. He had believed for 5 years that the problem he had created by allowing a grants coordinator to see too much had been permanently resolved. He said nothing when he saw her? I asked Lee. He said, "You survived." What did she say? Pause on the phone. Then Lee said, "She said, more than that." 3 months later, Nari found a dead starfish on the beach. She carried it to me carefully, cupped in both hands, with the specific grave solemnity that she brought to important discoveries. "It's dead," she informed me. "I see that. Are we sad?" I thought about how to answer this with the appropriate level of honesty for a 4.5-year-old who had been asking very good questions her entire life. "A little," I said. "But it had a full life." She looked at the starfish. "How do you know?" "It made it all the way to the beach," I said. "That's not nothing." She considered this seriously. Then she put the starfish down at the edge of the water and stood watching it for a moment. "Okay," she said. "Goodbye, starfish." And then she ran back up the sand toward her mother, who was sitting in a folding chair with a cup of coffee and the specific expression of a woman who has finally, after 5 years of watching over her shoulder, allowed herself to face forward. I stood at the water's edge and watched them. This is what I know now that I did not know before. Grief is not always about death. Sometimes grief is about the years you did not have, the mornings you missed, the ordinary moments, breakfast, bedtime, a child's hand finding yours in the dark, that happened without you in a house you did not know existed, on a coast you had never visited. You can grieve those years. You are allowed to grieve them. And you can also, when the time comes and the woman you buried walks back through a door and a small girl looks at you with your own eyes, decide that what is left is enough. That the years ahead are enough. That the hand in yours, warm and certain, is enough. Chairman Kwon Dae-hyun was formally charged with money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accessory to wrongful death in the case of Elena Cruz. The trial is ongoing. Lee tells me it will take 2 years. He also tells me it will not fail. Mama Ebra's account was closed. I placed flowers at her grave, real ones this time, knowing she was there. Elena Cruz's family in the Philippines received a formal letter, signed by Prosecutor Lee, explaining the circumstances of their daughter's death. I do not know what they said in response. Some things are not mine to know. Zinichi and I are still married, technically, legally, officially, because you cannot divorce someone who is legally dead, which means the paperwork of our marriage had simply waited suspended in amber for 5 years. We laughed about that. Once. Very briefly. And then stopped laughing because it was also not funny at all. We are working on it. On all of it. On the things that were taken and the things that remain, and the extraordinary, improbable fact that we are all 3 alive and in the same place at the same time, which is more than I had any right to expect on that Tuesday morning when my bank called and something in my chest tightened and I drove south toward the sea with guilt in the passenger seat and found, instead, everything I thought I had lost. Nari came back down the beach. She stopped in front of me, looked up. "Appa," she said. "Yes. Can we get a dog?" I looked at Zinichi. She was already shaking her head, already laughing. "We'll discuss it," I said. "That means yes," Nari informed me and took my hand and pulled me back up the beach toward her mother. And I went. Some people disappear because they have to. Some secrets are kept not out of cruelty, but out of love so large it had no other shape it could take. This is not a story about betrayal. It is a story about survival. About what a mother will do to keep her child safe. About what a man finds when he stops being afraid to follow the trail. And about a little girl who looked at a stranger with his own eyes and decided, with the clear and uncomplicated wisdom of a child, that he had simply taken a very long time to arrive. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for being here. Leave a comment telling me, what would you have done in Ji-hoon's place? Would you have walked away? Or would you have knocked on the door? Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. New ones every week. And until next time, take care of the people who are still here.